The night air was heavy with rain, cold and thick as fog rolled across the lonely mountain road. Ethan Cole adjusted the collar of his worn army jacket, the faint light from his flashlight flickering against the wet pavement. Beside him trotted Max, his loyal German shepherd, muscles tense and ears alert. Every sound, the drip of rain, the whisper of wind through the trees, kept Ethan on edge, an old instinct that never left a soldier. He was heading home from town, carrying a bag of canned food and dog treats when Max suddenly froze. The dog let out a low growl, nose pointed toward the darkness beyond the bend. Ethan followed the line of sight, and then he saw it. A car, its headlights flickering weakly, had veered off the road and crashed into the ditch. Steam hissed from the twisted hood. Without hesitation, Ethan dropped the bag and ran. The rain pounded harder, soaking his clothes as he forced the car door open. Inside, a woman sat motionless, her white wedding dress torn, her face pale under the flickering light. Her hands trembled as she clutched the side of her wheelchair, one wheel bent from the impact. "Hey, can you hear me?" Ethan shouted over the storm, checking her pulse. It was weak but steady. The woman's lips moved faintly. "Help, please," then her eyes rolled back, and she went limp. "Max, stay close," Ethan ordered, carefully lifting her into his arms. Her dress clung to his soaked jacket, her veil torn and tangled in the seatbelt. He could feel her shivering. Max barked, pacing around them as thunder cracked above. By the time they reached his cabin, Ethan's muscles burned from the effort. He laid her gently on the couch near the fire, then covered her with an old wool blanket. The dog curled up nearby, watching her with worried eyes. Ethan knelt down, brushing wet strands of hair from her face. She looked fragile, almost unreal, a porcelain doll dropped into the mud. He removed her broken shoes and checked for injuries. A few bruises, a shallow cut on her temple, nothing fatal. She stirred, whispering something he couldn't catch. Her hands trembled even in sleep. Ethan sighed, glancing at Max. "Guess we've got company tonight, buddy." The dog tilted his head and gave a soft whine. Outside, the storm raged on, wind howling against the windows. Inside, the veteran and his dog watched over a stranger who had fallen from a world far removed from theirs, a bride in a wheelchair, carried from the wreckage into the arms of a man who had no idea how much her arrival would change his life forever. Morning light crept through the cabin's wooden blinds, thin streaks of gold slicing through the shadows. The storm had passed, leaving behind the scent of wet pine and smoke from the crackling fireplace. Ethan sat at the small wooden table, sipping black coffee from a chipped mug, his eyes never leaving the woman who lay asleep on the couch. Max dozed beside her, head resting protectively on her wheelchair wheel. For hours, she hadn't moved. He wondered who she was, a runaway bride, maybe. The dress looked expensive, delicate lace and pearls ruined by mud. But it was the wheelchair that caught his eye most, sleek, custom-built, nothing like the ordinary ones used in hospitals. Whoever she was, she came from money. That much was clear. Suddenly, she stirred. Her fingers twitched under the blanket, and her eyelids fluttered open. Confusion filled her pale blue eyes as she stared at the unfamiliar wooden ceiling. "Where am I?" Her voice was soft, hoarse, trembling. Ethan rose slowly, not wanting to startle her. "You're safe," he said calmly. "My dog and I found you after the crash last night. You were unconscious." Her gaze darted around the room, the small kitchen, the old photos of soldiers on the wall, the fire that kept the cold away. When she saw Max, she froze. The German shepherd lifted his head, tail wagging once. "He's friendly," Ethan reassured. "Saved your life, actually." She looked at the dog again, and for the first time, a flicker of warmth softened her expression. "Thank you," she whispered, though it wasn't clear if she was speaking to the man or the animal. Ethan crouched near her, checking the bandage on her arm. "You hit your head, but it's not serious. I cleaned the wound. You should rest." She tried to sit up but winced, her hands gripping the blanket tightly. "My chair." He pushed it closer. "One of the wheels was damaged. I'll fix it later." For a moment, silence hung between them, heavy, cautious. Finally, she said, "My name's Claire." Her tone carried the weight of someone used to formality, the kind that never truly relaxes. "Ethan," he replied simply. "And that's Max." She nodded faintly. Then her eyes fell on her ruined wedding dress, still damp and clinging to her. Her throat tightened. "I was supposed to be at a wedding," she murmured, voice breaking. "My wedding." Ethan didn't ask the questions that hovered in his mind: who she was, why she was alone, what she was running from. He'd seen enough pain in people's eyes to recognize when someone didn't need interrogation, just kindness. "I'll make you some soup," he said, standing. "You need strength." As he walked to the kitchen, Claire watched him, the calm, disciplined way he moved, his quiet authority that reminded her of safety she hadn't felt in years. Max nudged her hand gently, sensing her unease. She stroked his fur, her eyes wet with tears. "Thank you, Max," she whispered. And though Ethan pretended not to hear, the sound of her trembling voice lingered in the air like a secret that neither of them yet understood: that this fragile moment between a broken soldier. Days passed quietly in the small cabin, the rhythm of life slow and deliberate. Claire gradually regained some of her strength, learning to maneuver her wheelchair along the wooden floors that Ethan had cleared for her. The fire's warmth filled the room, mingling with the scent of pine and the faint aroma of soup simmering on the stove. Max never left her side, circling and nudging her when she faltered, or resting his head on her lap when she paused. Ethan had become a constant presence, quiet, reliable, and careful not to overstep. He repaired her wheelchair as best he could with the tools he had, adjusting the bent wheel, tightening the screws, and fashioning a makeshift cushion to ease the pressure on her back. Claire watched him work, noting the precision and patience in his movements. Soldiers, she realized, carried habits of discipline and care that never faded, even in civilian life. During the afternoons, she would watch him chop firewood outside or teach Max new commands, the crisp air filling the cabin with a sense of normalcy. Occasionally, she tried to speak about herself, but the words faltered. I don't know where to start," she admitted one evening, sitting by the fire as Max lay at her feet. Ethan gave a small shrug, brushing ash from his hands. "Start wherever you feel safe. Or not at all. Doesn't matter to me." The tension in her shoulders eased slightly. She found herself talking about trivial things: the forests near the cabin, the sound of rain against the roof, the taste of soup. And slowly, Ethan began to see glimpses of the woman behind the frightened bride, intelligent, resilient, and quietly defiant. Yet, even in these small moments of trust, hints of a different life peeked through. Claire had expensive watches, custom jewelry, and a phone that she guarded fiercely, silencing calls without explanation. Ethan noticed the way she flinched when he mentioned the outside world or asked about her home. Something was off. One night, as rain pattered against the windows, Claire finally spoke, voice trembling. I wasn't just running from a wedding." She looked down at her hands, fidgeting with a small, ornate ring. "I'm someone important. Someone people want to control. I wasn't safe." Ethan leaned back, studying her carefully. "I don't care who you are," he said simply. "You're here now. Safe. That's what matters." Claire lifted her eyes to meet his, surprised by the calm in his voice, the lack of judgment. She had been used to wealth and status defining her worth, but here, in this cabin, none of that mattered. Just a man, his dog, and her. For the first time in weeks, she felt a flicker of hope. A fragile, trembling thing that maybe, just maybe, she could trust someone again. And Max, sensing her shift in mood, wagged his tail and nudged her hand gently, as if approving the unspoken promise that they would protect each other, no matter what storms lay ahead. But outside, the world that had been chasing her didn't sleep. Shadows moved, plans were set, and danger lingered beyond the trees. Claire's secret wasn't safe for long, and the peaceful rhythm of the cabin was only the calm before the storm. It was late morning when the black SUV appeared at the edge of the forest, its tires crunching on the gravel path. Claire was practicing maneuvering her wheelchair along the newly smoothed wooden floors of the cabin, Max following closely, when she first saw the dark shape through the window. She froze, a chill running down her spine. The vehicle's tinted windows reflected the trees, hiding the faces inside, but the sheer size and presence of it sent a warning she couldn't ignore. Ethan stepped outside to check the perimeter, Max at his heels, ears pricked and muscles tense. I don't like this, Ethan muttered, scanning the forest line. His hand rested instinctively on the handle of the small hunting knife he always carried. Claire tried to stay calm, but her pulse quickened. Ethan, someone's here, outside, watching. He nodded and returned inside, closing the door gently behind him. Stay calm. I need to see who it is before we do anything. He glanced at Max, who let out a low growl that vibrated through the cabin floor. Claire's mind raced. Something about the SUV felt wrong, deliberate. Her training, instilled over years of navigating high-stakes corporate politics, told her this wasn't a random visitor. Whoever was out there had a purpose. Someone wanted her found. Minutes stretched into an unbearable tension. Then, the SUV door opened, and a well-dressed man stepped out, speaking calmly into a phone. His voice was confident, controlled, the kind that commanded attention without raising it. Claire's stomach sank. "That's him," she whispered. "Richard Kane, he's the one who wants my inheritance." Ethan listened quietly, observing the man's body language through a crack in the blinds. Every instinct in him screamed danger. "All right," he said finally, turning to Claire. "We can't wait here. You need to move somewhere safe, and I need to make sure they don't follow." She hesitated, gripping the arms of her wheelchair tightly. "I can't, they'll see me, they'll." "You trust Max?" Ethan asked, his eyes locking with hers. She nodded, swallowing her fear. "Then trust me. We move now." Ethan maneuvered her through the cabin's back door, Max ahead, sensing the safest path through the forest. The rain from the previous days had softened the ground, making every step precarious. The three of them moved quietly, Ethan lifting her wheelchair over fallen branches when needed, Max guiding them, growling at the slightest sound. By the time they reached a hidden clearing Ethan had scouted earlier, the SUV had vanished from view. Claire's heart pounded, but a small spark of relief flared. She realized just how much she had come to rely on Ethan and Max, not just for safety, but for stability in a world that had become suddenly treacherous. Sitting in the damp clearing, Ethan tightened a strap on her wheelchair, brushing her hair from her face. "We're not safe yet, but we're alive," he said. Claire's lips trembled, half from fear, half from gratitude. I don't even know how to thank you." Ethan gave a faint, wry smile. "You don't need to. Just survive. That's enough for me." Max barked softly, almost as if agreeing, and the three of them huddled together, listening to the wind through the trees, aware that the danger lurking beyond the forest line was far from gone. The calm of the clearing was deceptive. Claire's secret, her fortune, and her enemies had already started to close in, and nothing in the wilderness could hide her for long. Night had fallen, and the forest around the cabin was alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures, owls hooting, branches cracking under unseen footsteps, and the distant rumble of thunder from a storm long past. Ethan crouched behind a thick stand of pines, Max at his side, ears alert and tail stiff. Claire's wheelchair had been hidden in a shallow depression covered with branches and leaves, a temporary shelter until they could figure out their next move. Claire sat huddled beneath a thick blanket, shivering from cold and adrenaline. Her hands gripped Max's fur tightly, drawing comfort from his steady presence. "They'll come back," she whispered. "They won't stop until they have me." "They won't find you here," Ethan replied, voice low and steady. "I've accounted for every path they could take. We'll stay one step ahead." His hands were rough from years of battle, but his touch when he adjusted her blanket was careful, considerate, almost gentle. Hours passed. Claire tried to sleep, but the fear gnawed at her. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig made her heart race. Ethan noticed, and without a word, he kept vigil, watching the forest edge while Max patrolled silently around them. For a moment, she allowed herself to relax in the presence of these two guardians, feeling the first real sense of safety in what felt like forever. Suddenly, a low growl from Max cut through the stillness. Ethan's head snapped toward the sound, and in the dim light, shadows shifted among the trees. A figure emerged, a man, cautiously stepping forward. Ethan's hand tightened around his knife. "You shouldn't have come back," Ethan said, voice calm but firm. The intruder froze, realizing he was alone against the veteran and his dog. Max stepped forward, teeth bared, a warning growl rumbling deep in his chest. Claire felt her pulse spike but didn't panic. She had come to trust Ethan, and Max, to protect her. As the intruder raised a gun, Max lunged, knocking him off balance. Ethan charged, disarming the man with precision, his military training flawless under pressure. The struggle was brief but decisive. The man fled, disappearing into the dark forest, leaving the three of them trembling but unhurt. Ethan knelt beside Claire, brushing a strand of hair from her damp face. "See," he said softly. "You're safe. For now." Claire exhaled shakily, relief flooding through her. I don't know how to repay you," she murmured. "You don't need to," Ethan replied, helping her steady herself in the wheelchair. Just survive. That's enough for me. Max barked once, tail wagging, as if echoing Ethan's words. Claire smiled faintly through her tears, realizing something profound. She had been saved not because of her wealth, not because of her title, but because of loyalty, courage, and love, the kind that existed in the quiet heroism of a soldier and his dog. As the first light of dawn began to filter through the trees, Claire, Ethan, and Max sat together, exhausted but alive. Outside, the world remained dangerous, full of greed and threats, but inside that small clearing, a bond had been forged, unbreakable, enduring, and full of hope for whatever came next. It was a beginning, and for the first time in her life, Claire believed that she could face the future, no matter what it held, because she was no longer alone.